Venue hot. On the day of my grand wedding, my eldest sister, who was recently widowed, suddenly suffered a miscarriage and hung by a thread. My husband, who was about to perform the wedding vows, resolutely abandoned me and guarded her bedroom for a full day and 2 nights. On the 3rd day he finally returned. He burst into the bridal chamber and choked me. Su Mingwan, do you have a heart? Mingyu is at death's door, and you have the nerve to sit here peacefully as my princess. I am the youngest granddaughter of the grand tutor. Because my sister was frail and my mother had no time for me, I was raised by my grandmother since childhood. Grandmother was a famous talented woman in her youth, so I was raised to be well educated and refined. Logically, I should have been the most favored noble lady in the capital, but when I was 14, my grandparents passed away one after another, and from then on, I felt like an outsider in this home. My eldest sister knew how to act spoiled to win favor, and being sickly, she would cough up blood at the slightest displeasure. Therefore, all the family's affection was given to her. I often watched their happy family harmony like a bystander, while I often spent nights dazing alone in my grandparents' old room. When I was 16, my 18-year-old sister finally got married. Mother fell seriously ill from missing her, so I nursed her while managing the household affairs efficiently. I thought that with my sister gone, Mother would finally notice me. But her first words upon recovery were, "How cold is your heart? Your sister married into the outer city, yet you aren't sad at all." I looked down at the herbal soup in the bowl, and did not respond. Why should I be sad about her marrying far away? I couldn't be happy enough. Mother was annoyed by my indifferent attitude and waved me out. At night, I heard her discussing my marriage with Father. Father said to keep me for another year to accompany her. But Mother refused, saying she would be more at peace if I were not there. My grandmother and the current Empress Dowager shared a childhood bond, so I was betrothed from a young age to her favorite grandson, the 9th Prince, Xin Xiao. Xin Xiao is the legitimate son of the Empress, and his elder brother is the Crown Prince, so he has been a noble and leisurely prince since childhood. Grandmother arranged this marriage likely to ensure my life would be worry-free. Xin Xiao has a cold temperament, but he was uniquely gentle with me. I once thought that was just his nature, and that his treatment of me was considered good. But until the day before our grand wedding, when I saw him dazing outside my sister's courtyard, did I realize he wasn't cold. I simply had never entered his heart. My sister was also unfortunate. Her husband died of illness less than 6 months after their marriage. My parents immediately went to the outer city to bring her back, and she was 1 month pregnant at the time. After my sister returned, my parents' focus shifted entirely back to her. Even for me, whose wedding was less than half a month away, they refused to spare a single bit of energy. I handled everything myself, including the personal decoration of the bridal chamber in the prince's manor. Sometimes I was glad grandmother taught me these things, otherwise, how would I have continued living on my own? I said my sister was unfortunate, right? Otherwise, she wouldn't have lost her husband and then her child. But when I saw my parents and Xin Xiao all loving her as if she were their life, I momentarily wondered who was truly unfortunate. When did Xin Xiao fall in love with my sister? I think it was likely after she returned home. Every time Xin Xiao came to find me, Mother would tell him to go straight to the back garden. Previously, he always waited in the front hall. The back garden housed female family members. How could he enter so casually? At that time, I was busy embroidering my wedding dress when a maid reported the prince had arrived. But after waiting a long while he did not appear. I went out to find him, only to see from afar that Xin Xiao was standing outside my sister's courtyard. There was a wind that day, and my sister, in a white gauze dress, was playing the zither in the garden. As the wind blew, she looked like a celestial fairy about to fly away on the breeze. Xin Xiao was mesmerized. Standing in the distance, I was also stunned. As it turned out, Xin Xiao came every day, and his purpose was never me. Mother said our wedding was imminent, and told Xin Xiao to come over more often to build our relationship, and discuss the wedding. But it was all a lie. She was merely using me as a bridge to pave the way for my sister. But why must they steal the path grandmother left for me? I didn't know how long they had been interacting like this, but when I discovered it, the wedding was the next day. A breath of foul air was stuck in my chest, unable to be swallowed or spat out. My sister was like my nightmare, one I could never escape. I used to think that as long as I left this house, everything would be settled, but in the end, they wouldn't even let my marriage go. In my dreams, I seemed to see grandmother. She stood in the distance, smiling at me lovingly, with bright sunlight behind her. I ran toward her crying, but I caught nothing but air. When I woke up again, the pillow was soaked. My marriage was personally decreed by the Empress Dowager, and I was raised by grandmother from childhood. Though my parents didn't love me, they counted on me to bring glory to the family. I thought as long as I was good enough, I would bring honor to the Su family. But I was wrong again. My sister was their daughter. I was merely a tool to maximize their interests. I entered the bridal sedan with a heart full of concerns. Until the moment before the wedding vows, I was still thinking that perhaps this was fate, and I should accept it. But I never expected that my sister would actually have a miscarriage. Although she was in poor health, she was always under a physician's care, and they said there would be no problem as long as she rested. I didn't expect it to happen anyway. But I didn't understand why the news of her miscarriage was sent directly to Shen Xiao. Before I could recover from the news, Shen Xiao had already thrown down the red silk in his hand and hurried to the Su residence. He truly abandoned me to go find my sister. I lifted my veil to face a house full of guests, unable to even cry for a moment, because I had to deal with this mess. Shen Xiao is a prince. He has the capital to be willful. I do not. Overnight, I became the laughingstock and gossip of the entire capital. Shen Xiao and my sister became a pair of lovers who were unable to be together. How ridiculous. Coincidentally at this time, the Empress Dowager caught a cold and summoned me to the palace to nurse her. I knew the Empress Dowager was bailing me out and also supporting me. She wanted to use the opportunity to warn my parents that I still had her as a backer. Sure enough, Shen Xiao came the day after I entered the palace. I thought the Empress Dowager had told him to come and make peace with me, but he knelt directly before her. He said he wanted to marry my sister into his house. The Empress Dowager was so angry she threw an entire tea set at him, but he didn't flinch and remained firm. Finally, I was the one who pushed him out, saying the Empress Dowager was ill and we should discuss things later. Shen Xiao looked at me with a gloomy gaze and flung my hand away. Regardless of the heavy rain outside, he knelt directly at the door. He said he would not shake my position as the primary consort, but he must marry Su Mingyu as a side consort. If the Empress Dowager did not agree, he would kneel indefinitely. My heart tightened with even more pain. He was actually this resolute. I thought that a few days of being starstruck couldn't possibly outweigh our 10+ years of friendship. But I was naive after all. He had fallen for my sister with a true passion that allowed him to turn against the Empress Dowager for her sake. What about me? What do I count for? It turns out he is just like my parents. In their hearts, I am just a tool. In the torrential rain, I stayed with Shen Xiao for quite a while. Finally, I turned away resolutely. Fine, let her have everything. Soaked with rain, I knelt on the floor and had a deep conversation with the Empress Dowager for nearly an hour. Later, when I took the divorce papers to Shen Xiao, he was stunned. He looked at the divorce papers in my hand in shock, and after a long while he finally said, "Mingwan, I never thought about divorcing you." My voice was faint. But I did. I had already signed my name and pressed my thumbprint on the divorce papers. After handing them to Shen Xiao, I left the palace that night. No one knew where I went until daylight broke, and I was already far away from the capital. Mingwan. A female voice came, and I turned to see my childhood best friend Lin Qian. Lin Qian came from a family of doctors. Her grandfather was the head of the Imperial Medical Academy, and she had learned excellent medical skills since childhood. Lin Qian handed me a bag of food. "You said you wouldn't enjoy your blessings in the capital, and insisted on going to the border to suffer with us." I looked back at the army that was resting, feeling a sense of smooth clarity I had never felt before. There were no annoying people here, and I no longer possessed anything they could covet. Years ago, my grandmother saved the Empress Dowager's life in an accident, and the Empress Dowager always remembered that life-saving favor. Before grandmother passed away, she asked the Empress Dowager for 3 favors for me, and she agreed. Last night, I used all 3 favors at once. First, I asked the Empress Dowager to allow my divorce. Second, I asked the Empress Dowager to preside over my breaking of ties with the Su family from then on. Third, I asked the Empress Dowager's permission to follow the army to the border. I had learned wound treatment from Lin Qian, and wanted to contribute my modest efforts to the military camp. 3 months later, we finally arrived at the border. It was different from what I had imagined. I thought it would be a place of flying war fires and misery. But what I saw were vast grasslands and eagles soaring freely. Especially the townspeople, who were happy and didn't look like war refugees at all. I heard this was related to the Crown Prince personally supervising the army. The current Crown Prince, Shen Zhao, is a man of decisive slaughter. With him here, even the enemy forces dared not act recklessly. On the night we arrived at the camp, the Crown Prince personally welcomed us. I stood to the side with the medical team. Shen Zhao's gaze swept over and paused on me. Su Mingwan. Crown Prince Shen Zhao and Shen Xiao are both legitimate sons of the Empress, but the two brothers have completely different personalities. Shen Xiao is cold but wears his emotions on the outside. Shen Zhao is different. Having been the heir since childhood, his thoughts run very deep. I once heard my grandfather say the Crown Prince is meticulous, and even the current emperor finds it hard to guess what he is thinking. I hadn't had much contact with Shen Zhao, but the impression was deep. I remember when I was 10, I was flying a kite near the Eastern Palace, and the string broke, blowing the kite onto a tree inside the Eastern Palace courtyard. I ran in to find the kite, but was stopped by the servants. They seemed not to want me to enter, but before I could explain anything, Shen Zhao came out. He gave a light leap and retrieved the kite for me. He was 15 that year, spirited and dressed in white. When he returned the kite to me, he had a kind smile on his face, looking much better than the often long-faced Shen Xiao. I bowed to thank him but accidentally glimpsed a bloody dagger hidden in his sleeve. My heart skipped a beat, and my eyes met his smiling ones. My brain buzzed for a moment. I didn't even remember how I fled the Eastern Palace that day. I only knew that from then on, every time I saw Shen Zhao, I would hide far away. What are you dazing about? Shen Zhao's voice came and my body jolted. I realized I had already been taken into his tent for questioning. Unlike the youthfulness of his younger years, after not seeing him for several years, he had transformed into a true king. Dressed in black, he commanded respect without being angry. His aura was by no means inferior to the emperor's, and it even had a bit more of a killing edge. I am asking you, what are you doing here? Shen Zhao stood before me, his tall figure completely blocking the candlelight. I shifted my body to the side and said, I had no home to go to, so I came. I didn't believe he didn't know what happened in the capital, so there was no need to explain. Nonsense! Shen Zhao shouted in a deep voice, and I jumped again. He caught my movement. Are you afraid of me? The fear from childhood is truly not easy to dissipate. After a moment, he turned and sat by the desk. This is not a place for you to throw tantrums. Tomorrow I will arrange for someone to send you back to the capital. I'm not going back. I was categorical. Although I feared him, I had to stick to my principles. Since I had come, I would not back down. Shen Zhao seemed not to expect me to be so firm. He stared at me for a long while and finally said, If that is the case, do not regret it. Half an hour later, I came out of Shen Zhao's tent. Lin Qian was waiting for me. Seeing me come out, she hurried to meet me. You scared me to death. Did His Highness make things difficult for you? I shook my head. His Highness said I should follow you to the medical camp tomorrow morning. Lin Qian's eyes widened. That place is full of nothing but wounded soldiers and refugees. What is he letting you do there? I took Lin Qian's arm. I didn't come here to enjoy myself. This is fine. I thought Shen Zhao probably wanted me to retreat in the face of difficulties. Because the next morning, when I followed the medical team to the medical camp, even though I was fully prepared mentally, I was still stunned by the scene before me. No matter how much pain I thought I had in the capital, it was insignificant compared to these wounded soldiers and refugees. In an instant I understood Shen Zhao's words. This was not a place for me to throw tantrums. He was right. My inner courtyard struggles and romantic entanglements were not worth mentioning here. But I still did not regret making this choice. This place made me feel needed, unlike in the capital where I was treated as a tool everywhere. I familiarized myself quickly, assisting behind Lin Qian, and soon I could handle some minor pains and injuries independently. In just a few days, I went from the former young mistress to Miss Su in the medical camp. Everyone liked me, mostly because I was gentle and loved to smile. Some children even refused to take their medicine if they didn't see me. Every day I wore plain clothes and a plain face, busy from the moment I opened my eyes until I fell asleep as soon as I hit the pillow at night. I hadn't thought about those people in the capital for a long time. Seeing me like this, Lin Qian said she didn't know if bringing me here was the right decision. She said I should have been a high and mighty prince's consort. Why did I have to come to such a place to suffer? I knew she felt sorry for me, but I really didn't think it was suffering, because every day I lost myself in everyone's praise. Here I was never some daughter of the Su family. I was just me. I was Su Mingwan, the Su Mingwan who was needed by everyone. Lin Qian, seeing that I was firm despite the hardship, jokingly teased me, saying if this continued, she wouldn't let me go back. Go back? I never thought about going back. In the blink of an eye, I had been in the medical camp for nearly a month. As early winter arrived, the border was unlike the capital. It had already begun to snow. The condition of some elderly people and children with poor resistance worsened, and the demand for medicinal materials increased. One day, Lin Qian asked me to go to the slightly farther Lin city to collect some medicine for an emergency. Everything was going well, but on the way back, we encountered mountain bandits. I only had 2 guards with me, while the other side had 20 to 30 people. While the guards released a signal, the other side also surrounded us. In the end, I fell down a slope to protect those medicines. Before losing consciousness, I seemed to hear Shen Zhao's voice. When I woke up again, I was already lying in Shen Zhao's tent. Drink your medicine now that you're awake. The words had no temperature, but they still made me, who had just experienced life and death, feel warm. I was out of danger. When I was surrounded by those people, I had even thought of dozens of ways to die, but I actually came back. Shen Zhao stood by the bed with the medicine bowl. He didn't know how to do this kind of caretaking, and looking at him like this was actually somewhat cute. You have some abrasions. Lin Qian already applied medicine for you. You will rest here for a few days. I will go to General Lin's tent. General Lin Yuan is Lin Qian's younger brother. We grew up playing together and had a very good relationship. At 15, he joined the army and left home, and later Lin Qian also came to the border. The entire Lin family are Shen Zhao's people. Hiss. As I was thinking, Shen Zhao tapped my forehead with his finger. What are you thinking? Drink the medicine. I felt a bit wronged. This person was too fierce. I was afraid. No, I had to heal quickly and leave this place. Don't even dream about it. Once you're healed, I won't let you go back to the medical camp. Shen Zhao kept his word and indeed did not let me go back. But at the same time he made adjustments to the medical camp. The main medical force remained there, headed by Lin Qian. A portion of those who were almost healed were sent back to the military camp early to recover, with me leading a small team to take care of them. By spreading it out like this, the pressure on both sides was much lower. One day, while changing dressings for the wounded, I accidentally heard them talking about the bandit suppression that day. It turned out Shen Zhao had been planning to deal with those bandits for a while, and happened to intend to act that day. I was also lucky, otherwise Shen Zhao and his men wouldn't have arrived so timely. Miss Su, you don't know, His Highness's eyes turned red with anxiety when he saw you fall down the mountain. He killed a bandit leader on the spot. My hand shook, and I thought of the short blade in his sleeve again. When we set out, His Highness said to leave a few alive, but seeing you injured, His Highness didn't leave a single one alive. Perhaps my expression was too tense. A soldier next to him nudged the man. Don't say those things, you'll scare Miss Su. The soldier immediately explained. Miss Su, please don't misunderstand. Those bandits were burning, killing, and looting. They destroyed so many good girls, so His Highness wasn't killing the innocent. Su Mingwan. Before we could finish chatting, Shen Zhao called me. I got up and followed him into the tent. The herbal soup was before me again. Can I not drink it? No. Actually, my injury is already healed. There's no need. If you don't drink it, Go back to the capital as soon as possible. Don't stay here and add to my trouble. He was like that, never able to speak nicely. While his back was turned and he couldn't see me, I gave him a fierce glare. Oof. When he turned back, I had already changed to a well-behaved expression and lifted the empty bowl. There, is that fine? After finishing the medicine, I intended to continue working, but was called back by Zhao again. The moment I turned my head, before I could see clearly the figure flashing before my eyes, I felt something being stuffed into my mouth. MMPH. What? A sweet taste spread between my teeth. Zhao still had a dark face. From now on, if you drink your medicine obediently, there will be fruit candy to eat, but if you don't drink it on time, I will send you away. For some reason, I suddenly really wanted to cry. After my grandparents died, no one had taken care of me this way. Zhao probably had never seen me with such an expression. He was a bit disdainful. The grand tutor's granddaughter, moved to tears by a single piece of candy? It turned out I had actually shed tears. Realizing I had lost my composure, I quickly wiped my eyes and smilingly told Zhao not to mind. But Zhao's expression was serious. A young lady, it's nothing to be a bit weak. I didn't respond to his words, and instead prepared to leave. The Empress Dowager was going to title you a county princess. Wouldn't it be better to stay by her side and enjoy your blessings? Why did you insist on coming out to suffer this hardship? My choice seemed like suffering to everyone, but I alone found joy in it. Those so-called relatives, I didn't want to see them for even a moment. But who could I tell these things to? Who would understand me? It was my own pain. How could others feel the same? I checked my emotions and prepared to walk away, when Zhao's voice came from behind me again. Su Mingwan, is there really no one else in this world you can depend on? Depend on whom? I paused but didn't look back. I asked him back, and perhaps even he didn't know. Whom could I depend on? My parents and sister? Or my childhood sweetheart husband? I didn't dare think about it. Those I considered my closest treated me like this. Could there be anyone else in this world I could depend on? A tear fell, but I smiled. Perhaps the children in the medical camp and the soldiers outside will be those I depend on. With them, I feel like a living person. My injuries were completely healed, and I suggested moving out of Zhao's tent several times. But this man was used to being bossy and simply wouldn't allow it. When I made a fuss, he would use that same line. If you don't listen, I'll send you away. I would stomp my feet in anger every time, and even sometimes call him by his name. Zhao, all you know is how to scare me. But Zhao didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled provocatively. Then why don't you try and see if I'm scaring you or acting for real? Damn it, this man had really caught my weakness. Although Zhao didn't sleep in the main tent at night, he returned during the day to handle official business. I rested in another partition, and was often outside taking care of the soldiers during the day. Actually, we didn't meet often, but every time we did, we would bicker and argue. The weather got colder and colder, and Zhao had another partition made for me in the main tent specifically for seeing the soldiers, saying that I often laughed and talked with them outside, and it was noisy whenever he passed by. This man was so strange. He complained I was noisy but wouldn't let me leave. A few days later, he had several more charcoal braziers added to my partition. I remember that day he still had a dark face, saying the weather was cold, and he couldn't let the soldiers who were seeing the doctor freeze along with me. I curled my lip and rolled my eyes where he couldn't see. Stare again and I'll blindfold you. I jumped. Did this man have eyes in the back of his head? Recently the enemy camp was very quiet, and the soldiers' health had greatly improved. I chatted with the soldiers every day and bickered with Zhao. The days flew by, and my little room became more and more lively. Every day soldiers would either bring me some food or come to chat with me. Some even wanted to write a letter to their beloved girls back home, and came to ask me to write for them. Finally, once when the soldiers brought me some wild game, they were met with Zhao's dark face. None of you are training. Do every one of you want to go to the battlefield to die? The soldiers feared him most. Usually, Zhao never appeared when they were at my place, and as time passed, they forgot that this was actually Zhao's tent. Zhao lost his temper, and the soldiers all knelt to beg for forgiveness. Each of you go out and receive 30 military strikes. Yes. I was anxious and wanted to plead for them. But I knew this was a military camp and I couldn't break Xinjiao's rules. But the soldiers were being punished because of me, and I couldn't bear it. After thinking it over, I waited until the tent was empty before daring to plead. But Xinjiao was insistent and immovable. Finally, having no choice, I used my ultimate move. Your Highness should just punish me along with them. You're being ridiculous. I also knew this wasn't good, but these soldiers had just recovered from serious injuries. Moreover, when they came to find me, they had just come off the training ground and hadn't delayed anything. To be honest, I thought Xinjiao's anger this time was a bit inexplicable. Although I didn't understand warfare, I had personally cared for the soldiers' wounds. And thinking of those bloody injuries, I truly felt for them. I begged again if the punishment could be lessened so the wounds wouldn't reopen. But Xinjiao was righteous and severe, saying that for a man to shed blood on the battlefield, what was so rare about blood and sweat? It seemed the more I pleaded, the angrier he got. For every word I said, he had 10. I couldn't win the argument, and was so angry my eyes turned red. I simply stomped hard on his foot. Xinjiao, if anything goes wrong with my soldier's health again, I won't let you off. Those words were quite disrespectful. The person before me was the crown prince and the commander of an army. How could he tolerate such transgression? After my outburst, I felt the fear. Without waiting for Xinjiao to react from his shock, I quickly ran back to my own tent. I didn't dare step out until nightfall, for fear of meeting Xinjiao. The tent curtain moved, and my heart jumped into my throat. Not eating dinner, not returning to the tent. Do you want to starve or freeze to death? Xinjiao entered, I sprang to my feet. As he walked toward me, I backed away. All the courage from the day was forgotten, and I looked completely cowardly. What? Where is the momentum of your cursing? I pursed my lips and didn't speak. Xinjiao had no patience. He stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. I was startled and tried to dodge, but he wouldn't allow it. His long arm reached out and circled me. Then he directly slung me over his shoulder and carried me back to his tent. There were many soldiers outside, and they all lowered their heads, not daring to look. I hammered at Xinjiao to let me down. Once in the main tent, he tossed me directly onto the bed. Su Mingwan, you stay here and eat and sleep well. I have to go out tonight, and I have something to say to you when I return. Do you understand? Only then did I notice Xinjiao was wearing night traveler clothes. For some reason, my heart suddenly tightened. What is your highness going to do? Xinjiao suddenly smiled and rubbed the top of my head. What? Worried about me? He said me, instead of the cold eye royal. I realized I had lost my composure a bit and quickly pushed him. Who's worried about you? Just go and come back quickly. Xinjiao seemed to be in a very good mood and wanted to tease me more, but the voice of a guard came from outside the tent. They had to set out. Xinjiao looked at me deeply, and then turned to leave. As he walked to the door, I stood up and said softly, "Be safe." Xinjiao's steps paused. He didn't look back but quickened his pace to leave. At night, Lin Qian brought in food. Seeing they were all my favorite dishes, I couldn't help but smile and thank her. Lin Qian waved it off, saying she was only doing it as a favor for someone. Entrusted by whom? Lin Qian's status here was also very high. No one but Xinjiao could order her. The two of us ate, and Lin Qian seemingly casually mentioned the argument between Xinjiao and me. Mingwan, do you know? His Highness has never taken back his words, but this time was the first. I was a bit confused. Lin Qian then talked about the punishment of the soldiers during the day. She said Xinjiao had sent those soldiers to her medical camp to clean, and hadn't given them any strikes at all. I was shocked. Not having seen those soldiers, I thought they had really gone to receive their punishment. I never expected Xinjiao would actually waive their punishment. Lin Qian patted my hand and said she heard from Lin Yuan that after I left the tent, His Highness stayed in the main tent for the entire afternoon, and hadn't even eaten dinner. I was somewhat moved. I thought that when Xinjiao returned this time, I certainly wouldn't go against him again. But I waited the entire night, and Xinjiao did not return. I asked Lin Yuan. He said normally he should have returned in the latter half of the night, and that not having returned by now, he might have been delayed on the road. I waited another day, and my heart was in my throat. Near evening, a small group of people rushed back to the camp covered in blood. I saw the unconscious Shenjiao in their hands. I accidentally broke my medicine bowl, and didn't react until Lin Qian pulled me inside. A blood-red sight blurred my vision. Having seen so many patients, this was the first time I felt helpless. Mingwan, take off His Highness's clothes. Okay. My voice was trembling. I forced down the inner panic and used scissors to remove Shenjiao's clothes. I couldn't even see where the wounds were. I only saw him covered in blood, his face pale. Lin Qian and I were busy for the entire night, and finally his condition stabilized. Lin Qian breathed a sigh of relief and looked at me. The subsequent care is just as important. The rest is up to you. My eyes were fixed on Shenjiao, with a worry I had never felt before. Shenjiao was unconscious for nearly 10 days. Although he would wake up briefly every day, his mind was not very clear. I stayed by his side taking care of him, almost without sleep. This day, I went out to bring medicine for Shenjiao and met Lin Yuan, who looked troubled. After inquiring, it turned out a sudden blizzard a few days ago had isolated the grain and medicinal supplies sent from the capital halfway. Although Lin Yuan had already sent people to meet them, the stored grain was only enough for a few days, and if there were any further accidents on the way, it might delay major matters. I looked back toward the tent. Shenjiao was unconscious, and many things couldn't be executed without his hand-signed orders. In the afternoon, after changing Shenjiao's dressing, I went out. I called Lin Yuan and asked him to take me to the silver bank in Lin City. When I gave a box full of silver notes to Lin Yuan and told him to go buy grain and medicine, Lin Qian rushed over. She snatched the box. Are you crazy? This is your dowry. Lin Yuan was also stunned and immediately refused, saying the camp hadn't reached the point of being completely out of supplies, and that the reinforcements were almost there. In any case, they couldn't use my dowry. I insisted on my decision. Whether the supplies can arrive in time is an unknown, and the things in storage won't last more than a few days. It's winter now, we must plan ahead. Besides, these are just external things. It's more meaningful to use them for the soldiers. Lin Qian wanted to say more, but I smilingly took her hand and told her I had kept the things my grandparents left me, and that what I brought out really wasn't important. A few days later, Shenjiao finally woke up. That day I was in the pharmacy brewing medicine when a soldier came to find me, saying His Highness had woken up and wanted to see me. I hurried back to the tent, but before I could speak, Shenjiao roared at me. Who told you to touch your dowry? Do I need a woman to support me? After spending so much time together, I was no longer afraid of him. I stepped forward to tuck the corners of his quilt, and sat by the bed to feed him medicine. Your Highness doesn't need a woman to support you, but you do need a woman to take care of you. Shenjiao turned his face away and ignored me. Being somewhat weak, he looked like a child. Lin Qian said not to make him angry, so I could only coax him. He even acted as if he couldn't hold the medicine bowl, and insisted I feed him. I had no choice. He was the crown prince, and I could only obey. I fed him 3 meals and 3 doses of medicine a day as usual. I didn't know if it was my delusion, but I felt Shenjiao's chin had become a bit more rounded. The batch of reinforcements on the road indeed didn't go smoothly. If I hadn't let Lin Yuan purchase those supplies in advance, the soldiers wouldn't have survived this winter. As a result, my status in the hearts of the soldiers became even higher. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was New Year's Eve. Shenjiao gave his permission today for everyone to be a little loose and happy. However, to ensure safety, we still couldn't be too relaxed. I had New Year's Eve dinner with everyone. Everyone was in high spirits talking about everything under the sun, but I felt a bit sad. I stood up to go to a secluded place to look at the moon. I miss my grandparents so much. I bowed toward the direction of my hometown, and when I stood up again, a warmth came from behind me. Shenjiao put his cloak on me. I have to return to the capital in early spring. Is there anything you need me to bring back for you? Shenjiao was someone who understood me very well. He no longer mentioned sending me back, and didn't even ask if I wanted to go back. Returning to the tent, I handed the newly written 100 longevity map to Shenjiao. I cannot personally offer birthday greetings for the Empress Dowager's birthday. Please deliver this for me, Your Highness. Xin Zhao nodded and didn't ask anything else. He knew that house was no longer my home. Mentioning it would only needlessly add to my sadness. Mingwan, this trip to the capital. Your Highness, the reinforcements have arrived. The group is about to reach the camp. Xin Zhao's expression changed slightly. He seemed to want to say something to me but finally only told me to rest early, that it would be very busy outside and not to go out. On New Year's Day, I got up early to cook dumplings for Xin Zhao, Lin Yuan, Lin Qian, and the children in the medical camp. I personally delivered Xin Zhao's bowl, but he wasn't in the tent, so I had to leave the bowl on the desk. Thinking he had been busy all night again. The scrolls scattered on the desk hadn't been tidied yet. I reached out to help him organize them when footsteps came from behind. I didn't turn around but complained. Your Highness is so used to ordering me around. In a few days when I return to the medical camp, let's see who takes care of you. As I spoke, I pointed to the bowl next to me. The freshly cooked dumplings, eat them while they're hot, or they'll get cold in a bit. Mingwan. Before I finished speaking, the person behind me pulled me into a hug. Mingwan, you've made me look for you so hard. It was Shen Xiao. My body stiffened for a moment, and then I struggled to get free. Let go. Mingwan, how cold is your heart? With all those years of feelings between us, how can you just let go? Shen Xiao was a martial artist. Since he intended to hold me, I couldn't break free at all. The sound of Shen Zhao and his guards talking came from outside the tent. Shen Xiao was certain I wouldn't dare make a scene and lowered his head to kiss my neck. Shen Zhao. In my desperation, I called out Shen Zhao's name. The sound of it surprised even me. Shen Zhao seemed to freeze for a moment, and then burst into the main tent. With a bang. Shen Xiao was kicked to the ground by Shen Zhao. The military camp is a restricted area. How can you act so wildly? I was shaking with anger, my eyes burning as I looked at Shen Xiao. What the ninth prince did today, I will surely report truthfully to the Empress Dowager and His Majesty. Shen Zhao shielded me behind him. Did he hurt you? I shook my head. I wasn't hurt, just angry, very angry. Shen Zhao raised his hand to smooth my messy hair. I put your New Year's gift in your tent. Why don't you go take a look? I glanced at Shen Xiao, knowing Shen Zhao wanted to send me away. I nodded and then turned to leave. Coming out of the tent, I went to the medical camp, not wanting to see Shen Zhao's face or hear a word he had to say. In the afternoon, Lin Qian returned from the camp. Usually when there was nothing to do at the camp, Lin Qian wouldn't go there, but today she had stayed there for the entire afternoon. Why are you back so late? Who was injured? Lin Qian looked at me with a complicated expression. The crown prince beat the ninth prince. My hand paused, and I looked at Lin Qian in shock. It turned out that shortly after I left in the morning, Shen Zhao had beaten Shen Xiao, even dislocating his arm. I have to say, I actually felt quite satisfied. Although Shen Xiao was also a martial artist, he had spent years in luxury in the capital. How could he be a match for Shen Zhao? A faint smile played on my lips as I thought of the hair ornament Shen Zhao had placed in my tent. During the days leading up to New Year's Eve, Shen Zhao had been going to the town every day. Lin Yuan said Shen Zhao seemed to have a sweetheart, because the usually serious and cold crown prince actually had a smile every day and even frequently visited jewelry shops that only women would visit. I remember at that time Lin Qian had stepped on Lin Yuan's foot, signaling him to stop talking. But Lin Yuan was blunt and even shouted that it was a good thing for His Highness to have a sweetheart, so why not let him say it? It turned out he had started preparing this gift long ago. Before dinner, I packed my things to return to the camp. But outside the camp, I saw Shen Xiao again. One of his arms was in a sling across his chest, and I couldn't help but sigh that Shen Zhao had really hit him hard. I turned to hide, but Shen Xiao called out. Mingwan, don't hide, I won't bully you. I just want to talk to you. I stood at least 5 paces away from him. Just say what you have to say here. Shen Xiao looked at me with a sorrowful expression. Mingwan, you weren't like this before. Even if I had a headache or fever, you would be extremely worried. You would secretly run to the prince's manor to bring me medicine, and you would. What? Is Su Mingyu not good to your highness? With one sentence, I made Shen Zhao's face full of difficulty. He closed his eyes. Mingwan, have you fallen in love with my imperial brother? His Highness and I are clean and upright. I didn't answer, yet I didn't deny it either. On the contrary, Shen Zhao's expression was somewhat unnatural. What right did he have to question matters between Shen Zhao and me? Besides, we were both unmarried, which was much more honorable than him, wasn't it? Unwilling to be entangled with Shen Zhao any further, I bypassed him and intended to leave. I didn't sign the divorce papers. My heart suddenly sank, and Shen Zhao walked toward me. Mingwan, you are still my wife. I was momentarily enraged. Shen Zhao, you are truly shameless to the extreme. Shen Zhao used his other hand to pull me, but I shook him off with force. Does your highness want this hand dislocated as well? Do not forget this is a military camp, not a place where you can run wild. Perhaps my voice was a bit loud, as it attracted the patrolling soldiers. Miss Su, do you need our help? A surge of warmth flooded my heart, and I shook my head. No need. You may carry on with your duties. The soldier stared at Shen Zhao with great vigilance, and even after moving some distance away, he continued to linger nearby. For the first time, I felt such a sense of confidence. Unlike my time in the capital, where I was lonely and helpless after my grandparents passed away. But now, I have so many family members here. They are all my backbone. Shen Zhao was clearly stunned by me as well. He looked at me in disbelief, as if seeing me for the first time. It was true. From childhood to adulthood, I had always been gentle and obedient. If not for that, I wouldn't have been bullied so much by them. After a long silence, Shen Zhao spoke. Mingwan, imperial brother will not be your ultimate destination. You no longer have the Su family as backing, and you were once my wife. Father would never allow someone like you to be the crown princess. What kind of person am I? I asked Shen Zhao in return and took a fierce step toward him. Shen Zhao, what kind of person am I? Did we not grow up together? Do you not know? Is it not all thanks to people like you that I have ended up like this today? Now you have the nerve to come here and mock me. How do you have the face for it? Shen Zhao knew he had misspoken and quickly changed his tune, saying he didn't mean it that way. Only that he felt Shen Zhao and I were not a good match. In short, his meaning was that my only way out now was to go back with him and be his princess. I sneered. Shen Zhao, I do not understand why you still bother me, but let me tell you, I have long since severed ties with you and that Su family. If you dare to harass me again, do not blame me for being unkind. Mingwan. Listen to me, Shen Zhao. I, Su Mingwan, have no attachments now. If you push me too far, even if it costs me my life, I will never let you step on me again. I returned to my own tent with a heart full of anger, and Shen Zhao was actually there. Seeing me enter, he stood up and came before me. I will handle the matter of the divorce papers when I return to the capital. I met Shen Zhao's eyes and couldn't help but sigh in my heart. They are biological brothers, yet how can they be so far apart? Shen Zhao is a man of action. He never makes many promises, but he always gets things done. In contrast, Shen Zhao made too many promises to me, yet in the end he hurt me deeply. But Shen Zhao was right about one thing. Shen Zhao and I probably have no future either, do we? The path I have chosen dictates that we cannot walk together. He is the crown prince. He must eventually return to the capital. And I will not stop my footsteps for anyone. I shook my head with a smile. Your Highness need not worry about this matter. Those parents of the Su family will force Shen Zhao to divorce me for the sake of Su Mingyu. Let them be the villains. I understand Shen Zhao. On the surface, he looks serious and cold, but his heart is the most indecisive. That is why even though he was so determined to marry Su Mingyu back then, he would be filled with guilt and reluctance toward me after I left. When I decided to leave, I was actually betting on this mentality. I took a gamble, betting that Shen Zhao wouldn't be without feelings for me after all these years, and betting that after I left, the Su family wouldn't get what they wanted either. Sure enough, the moment Shen Zhao appeared at the military camp, I knew I had won the bet. Because although Shen Zhao wanted to marry Su Mingyu, he never intended to shake my position as the primary wife. As long as he held on to that thought, my existence would continue to disgust the Su family. They have disgusted me for so long. It isn't too much for me to do this, is it? News came from the capital asking Xin Zhao and Xin Xiao to return early, before the spring flowers could bloom. As if sensing our less than ideal moods, it snowed heavily on the day they departed. Xin Zhao was still elsewhere giving instructions, while Xin Xiao looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. He wanted to beg me to go back with him, saying that as long as I followed him back, he would grant me anything. I changed my previous cold attitude, lowered my head with reddened eyes, and said, "Your Highness, please take care of your health." I did not directly refuse his words, but in this state, anyone would see me as a picture of aggrieved compromise. I called him Your Highness as I had in the past, and Xin Zhao's expression instantly brightened. He tried to take my hand but I pulled back. Things have come to this. Your Highness should go back and treat my sister well. We are not meant for each other in this life. Xin Zhao's expression became complicated. He stared at me fixedly and finally said a sentence telling me to wait for his news. I sneered in my heart. I will certainly wait to hear your good news. Xin Zhao's carriage set out first. Watching him leave, I turned and saw Xin Zhao. The expression on my face dropped instantly, and I looked at him with some embarrassment. A true little vixen. I thought Xin Zhao would be angry but he wasn't. He reached out to smooth the hair at my temples. With him, it's an act. What about with me? Your Highness sees everything clearly. I wouldn't dare. Xin Zhao gave a low laugh and then put his thick fox fur cloak on me. Take care of yourself, I will return as soon as possible. I nodded, though I still muttered in my heart that once he left, he probably wouldn't find it easy to return. Xin Xiao had told me that day that the emperor had already begun looking for a crown princess for Xin Zhao. No matter who that person was, it wouldn't be me. Life in the military camp continued in an orderly fashion. At the beginning of every month, Xin Zhao would send me a box filled with letters and all sorts of novelties. I could recite the contents of those letters by heart, but I never replied once. This thought pressed deep in my heart. I would let it grow wild in secret, for as for Xin Zhao, he would never belong to me. He belongs to the people of the world. Besides being Xin Zhao, he is the heir to the throne, the future monarch. He never made any promises to me, and I never placed any expectations on him. Only this piece of heaven and earth is the home he left for me. By the time the 12th box had accumulated, it was snowing in the camp again. On New Year's Eve, wearing the bright red cloak Xin Zhao had sent, I still bowed toward the direction of my hometown. Not far away was the sound of soldiers drinking and chatting. I felt a peace I had never known before. Grandfather, grandmother, Mingwan is living very well now, very happily. The day for Xin Zhao to send things arrived again, but up until the 15th day of the first lunar month, I received no news, not even a verbal message. I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. In the latter half of the night, Lin Qian and I were drinking in the tent. Lin Qian has a sweetheart, Xin Zhao's deputy Xie Yunji. He is a handsome man, yet upright to the point of being pedantic. Lin Qian had pursued him for several years, but he did nothing but hide or refuse. But from my observation, he was not indifferent to Lin Qian. Perhaps he felt his status was insufficient, and he was not a match for her. Lin Qian had drunk a bit much and patted my shoulder while slurring her words. ****. Wan, don't be afraid, you still have me. From now on, we sisters will depend on each other and forget those stinking men. I smiled and agreed with her, then stood up. You sit here for a while, I'm going to send some glutinous rice balls to Yuan and the others. Lin Qian stood up unsteadily. I'll go with you. The two of us reached Lin Yuan's tent. Before entering, we heard someone speaking inside. This is His Highness's intention. Please, General, keep the news strictly secret, especially from Miss Su. A sense of unease surged into my heart, and I lifted the curtain to enter the main tent. What matter cannot be told to me? However, I was also stunned upon entering the tent. The person before me was Xin Zhao's personal guard, Feng Ming. Commander Feng, why are you here? Should you not be by His Highness's side? As I spoke, my gaze fell on the desk, where a letter lay. It looked normal on the surface, but I recognized the special mark on the corner of the envelope. That was Xin Zhao's unique mark. It would never be used unless it was an emergency. I took a step forward. Has something happened in the capital? Where is His Highness? Where is he? I stared at Feng Ming. He didn't dare meet my eyes, yet I still saw his reddened eyes. I grew frantic and suddenly grabbed his collar with both hands. Speak! Where is His Highness? Miss Su. Lin Yuan stepped forward to pull me back. His usually calm voice was now trembling. On New Year's Eve, the eldest prince launched a palace coup. His Highness, to protect His Majesty, was seriously injured and I fear he is not doing well. With a thud, my body swayed and hit the desk behind me. Lin Qian hurried to support me. Wan, don't worry, my grandfather is still in the capital. His Highness will surely be fine. Lin Qian's words were meant to comfort me. If the situation weren't dire, how could this news have traveled to the border? But Shen Zhao's previous letter said he would return after the new year. He even told me to take good care of myself. How could he break his word? I composed myself for a moment and then looked at Feng Ming. You still have to return to the capital, right? Wait for me. I will go back with you. Having finished speaking, I ignored the persuasion of the people behind me and ran out of the tent with extremely fast steps. But just as I stepped out, I saw more than 20 people standing in perfect formation outside the tent. The moment they saw me, they all knelt on one knee. Greetings to the master. I recognized them. They were Shen Zhao's men. Feng Ming also stepped out of the tent at this moment and handed a blood-stained letter to me. His Highness repeatedly instructed that if anything happened, we were to hurry back to the camp as quickly as possible. His Highness said, from now on, the young lady is our master. With the Lin family and the young lady at the camp, His Highness can be at peace. His Highness hopes the young lady will not forget her original intention, for herself, and for His Highness to guard this piece of heaven and earth. My hands gripped that blood-stained letter tightly. Shen Zhao had likely foreseen this day and had even paved the rest of the road for me. Lin Qian walked over to support me. Wan, the capital is in a mess. His Highness surely wouldn't want you to go back and take risks. He only hopes you can have a peaceful life for the rest of your days. I stood there for a long time until snow began to drift from the sky, just like the snow during his departure last year. I locked myself in the main tent for several days, neither eating nor drinking, only repeatedly reading the letters Shen Zhao had written to me. I was filled with regret. If I had known there would be such a day, I would have certainly written back to him. I would have told him what was in my heart, and the yearning I felt. Finally, I made myself fall seriously ill. My brain was muddled with fever, and I constantly felt as if I saw Shen Zhao. Half a month later, news of the crown prince's passing reached us from the capital. Lin Qian and the others were afraid something would happen to me. But I was calmer than all of them. At night, the entire camp was a sea of plain white. I also changed into a plain white dress and sat alone in Shen Zhao's main tent all night. After the first 7 days of mourning, we returned to normal life. No one mentioned Shen Zhao in front of me again, though I knew they missed him dearly as well. We seemed to have a silent agreement. Everyone was as calm as if this had never happened. However, only I knew that I had hidden that blood-stained letter inside my pillowcase. Every night when it was quiet, only then would I bite the corner of the quilt and let my tears flow freely. In the height of summer, the camp received 2 pieces of news. The 9th Prince Shen Zhao was marrying a new princess. The border was assigned as a fief to a prince who was perpetually frail. When I received this news, I was cleaning Shen Zhao's main tent. Lin Qian looked at me, her eyes full of excitement. Do you know who the 9th prince is marrying? I shook my head. Then do you remember that little concubine's daughter from the Prime Minister's residence? 2 years younger than you. I still remember the elders joking when we were young that she looked like you. She looks more like your sister than Su Mingyu does. I remembered. That girl also liked Shen Zhao and had even caused trouble for me because I was betrothed to him. I couldn't help but smile faintly. She is not an easy one to deal with. Su Mingyu is likely to suffer this time. Yes, Yuan told me when he came back from reporting his duties that the 9th princess looks quite like Miss Su at first glance, but her temperament is excessively arrogant and domineering. Lin Qian said my guess was right. The Su parents had indeed pressured Shen Zhao, wanting him to marry Su Mingyu as his primary wife, but Shen Zhao insisted that I was the primary wife. Later, the Su family made a big scene. thinking the Empress Dowager would let Su Mingyu in out of regard for my grandmother's friendship. But who knew the Empress Dowager had heard from someone that Xin Xiao and the third daughter of the Prime Minister's residence were in love with each other. The Empress Dowager immediately made the decision to have both girls enter the household together. The Prime Minister's daughter became the primary wife, while Su Mingyu was a concubine. A concubine? I hadn't expected this. I thought that given Xin Zhao's affection for Su Mingyu, he could at least give her the rank of side consort, but I didn't expect her to be a mere concubine. But it makes sense. Even if Xin Xiao isn't the heir, he is still a prince of the first rank. The Su family is no longer the Su family of the past, so how could the imperial family allow a woman who has been married and has difficulty bearing children to be the primary princess? A trace of mockery touched my lips. They had initially pinned their hopes on me, certain that if I were the primary wife, Su Mingyu would have a chance to turn things around after joining. Perhaps they would even have taken one of my children to be raised under her name. I shook my head. Those parents of mine were truly capable of anything. But I was no longer afraid. I had cut off their retreat. Let's see who they bully from now on. But that wasn't enough. The blessings for those people in the Su family were still to come. Actually, I only found out later that my grandfather's close friends had all received instructions from him before his death. Grandfather didn't ask for much, only that if the Su family suffered trouble after his passing, as long as it wasn't me who came forward to ask for help, others need not bother. The implication was clear. If my parents were good to me, the Su family could rely on me to maintain the network grandfather had built. If they were bad to me, that connection would be severed. My father was weak all his life. Without grandfather, he didn't have the ability to build an estate himself. And more than half of the Su family's assets were in my dowry. I had used a part of it in the camp, and the rest was stored in the capital's silver bank. This time, Lin Yuan brought it all back for me. By now, the Su family in the capital was a hollow shell, unable to stand its ground any longer. Everything had settled. Lin Yuan said the 11th prince would be arriving in a few days. Border soldiers are always the most burdened and endangered, so the first thing this prince did upon arrival was to come and reward the soldiers. Another clever one who knows how to win people's hearts. True, they are brothers. They naturally share similarities. But for some reason, watching everyone busy themselves, I felt a bit uncomfortable. On the day that Prince arrived at the camp, I tidied up early and hid in the medical camp, only instructing them not to move anything in Xin Zhao's tent before I left. I knew doing this wasn't very good, but I couldn't get over the hurdle in my heart. I didn't want to see anyone replacing Xin Zhao's position. Returning in the evening, the camp was filled with sounds of laughter and joy. I stood outside the camp for a long time and finally didn't enter, but instead turned to go to the lakeside. I used to come here often when I was sad. Only then Xin Zhao would always accompany me. Since his accident, I hadn't come once. This was the first time I shed tears facing the lake. Only the mirror-like lake water before the gate remains. The spring breeze does not change the waves of old. I murmured this poem, when I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. Qian, you go back. I just want to stay alone for a while. Does Miss Su have a grievance against this prince, seeing as she won't return to the camp? A familiar voice reached my ears, and my mind fell into a daze. This voice. Is it Xin Zhao? The footsteps drew closer, yet I didn't dare turn my head. My hands trembled as I tried to calm my state of mind. I wanted to confirm, but in the past 6 months, this hallucination had appeared too many times. Even if it felt this real, I still didn't dare be rash. I deceived myself, thinking that if I didn't turn around, would this hallucination feel a bit more real and Xin Zhao stay a bit longer? Amidst my internal struggle, a sudden warmth came from behind, and I was pulled into a hug. Mingwan, I have returned. Xin Zhao's extra chapter. 6 months after returning to the camp, I finally married the girl I love. From the first moment I saw Mingwan until now, this road has been truly difficult. Because I was the legitimate son, I was born to be the heir. Perhaps others think I was born lucky, but I envied my 9th brother more. I was born only 2 years before him, yet I couldn't be as carefree as he was. He could show his emotions on his face and act spoiled with mother and grandmother, But I had to learn from a young age to remain unmoved even if Mount Tai collapsed before me. Even when I learned he was to marry Mingwan, I could only give a faint smile and a word of blessing. Later, I went to guard the border and unexpectedly learned that ninth brother and Mingwan had divorced. For some reason, amidst the anger, I actually felt a trace of secret joy. I thought that once I finished my work here, I must return to the capital once to see Mingwan. But before I could act, Mingwan came to the border with the Lin family. Such a bright and intelligent woman had been tortured to this point by ninth brother and the Su family. My heart ached with pain. I wanted to declare my feelings urgently, yet I felt it would be disrespectful to her. Mingwan grew up with her grandparents, and I was also a student of Grand Tutor Su. So in terms of intellectual compatibility, she and I were the most suitable pair. But after all the choices, they chose ninth brother. No matter, after all the twists and turns, heaven still sent her to my side. I knew Mingwan was a woman of inner resilience. Once she chose this path, she would never go back to the capital with me. So I made a bold decision. I knew the eldest prince had wolfish ambitions, and his maternal family had vast influence. Father loathed them, but feared them even more. I used the evidence of the eldest prince's crimes I had gathered over the years to make a trade with father. I would help father eliminate the eldest prince's lineage, and father would help me escape like a golden cicada shedding its skin. I originally had an 11th brother who died shortly after birth. It happened to be grandmother's birthday, and father, fearing it would bring bad luck to her, said he had been sent to the traveling palace to recuperate. After all these years, everyone had forgotten about this 11th prince. My ambition was never for that high throne. If I could guard the border indefinitely and protect the peace of the people, that would count as a life without regrets. I didn't mention a word about Mingwan, yet father saw everything. After pondering for a long while, he asked me whether the world was more important or the beauty. I answered faintly, if one can bring peace to the world while accompanied by a beauty, how wonderful would that be? I don't know what father thought of, but he gave a smile of relief. Go. With you at the border, I am at ease. From then on, there was no longer a crown prince Shenzhou in the world, only the 11th prince Shenyi. As for the position of heir, I suggested the son of my deceased second brother. The second prince and his wife were framed and killed by the eldest prince years ago, leaving only a 5-year-old son. Though he wasn't her direct grandson, the empress took pity on him and raised him by her side. Thus, the child had been close to me since he was small, even closer than ninth brother. During my escape this time, he also helped quite a bit by mediating. On our wedding night, I confessed all of this to Mingwan. At first she didn't speak, but finally, she shed tears. This silly girl. After suffering so much, she actually said she was lucky to have such loving grandparents, and to have me. Extra chapter. In the second year of my marriage to Shun Zhao, I gave birth to a daughter, Shun Changel. As the name implies, we hoped she would have long-lasting peace and joy. On the day of Changel's 100-day banquet, Shun Xiao came to the border quietly by himself. Perhaps due to traveling day and night, he had become much more haggard. I heard he had married 2 more side consorts. I don't know if it was too frequent, but he now seemed to have no spirit left. Shun Zhao and I met him at our residence in town. He didn't stay long, only leaving a very precious hair ornament for Changel. I initially refused, but he said he was the uncle. He might not be able to attend Changel's coming-of-age ceremony, so he prepared the gift in advance. In the end, it was Shun Zhao who accepted the gift. I thought Shun Zhao was no longer hostile toward Shun Xiao, but after taking the item he spoke. The carriage is ready. Depart now, and you can reach the next postal station before dark. His determination to see him off was quite resolute. I was helpless, and Shun Xiao gave a bitter smile. He looked at me as if he wanted to say something. But Shun Zhao guarded me closely, refusing to leave even a step. Finally, with no other choice, Shun Xiao only said take care, and then turned to board the carriage. On the carriage ride back, Shun Zhao teased me for a long time. This man's jealousy was too strong. I said it was all in the past, so why was he still jealous? Shun Zhao said the women Shun Xiao married into his manor all shared some resemblance to me. I was helpless, and I also knew that the prime minister's daughter back then was also Shun Zhao's handiwork. This man was truly very calculating. Actually, I mostly understood in my heart. Shen Xiao was of a fickle mind. He didn't get me, so he could never let go. But that has nothing to do with me anymore. I now have a beautiful daughter, a husband who loves me, and so many family members at the camp. It is enough. When Shen Zhao and I returned to the camp, before even getting off the carriage, we heard Lin Qian's crying. I grew anxious and hurriedly got off the carriage to run to her side, thinking something major had happened, but the girl was holding a rose-pink bead flower. Wanwan, look. Xie Yunji gave this to me. Lin Qian and Xie Yunji had been chasing each other for many years. It was said that Xie Yunji had finally had an epiphany recently. Look at that. He actually showed some promise and learned how to give gifts. Lin Qian was crying hard. I thought she was moved, but she wiped her nose and said, "But this bead flower is too ugly. Can I change it?" Lin Yuan spat out his mouthful of water. Lin Qian was also pulled into Xie Yunji's arms for gentle coaxing, as he explained that a rough man like him didn't understand these things, and would take her to buy a new one tomorrow. The setting sun spilled down like crushed gold, enveloping this land. I leaned into Shen Zhao's arms and looked up at the sky. Now the border is stable, and the people are happy and harmonious. I couldn't help but miss my grandparents again. I think they will surely see from the heavens that their Wanner is doing very well, and is very happy.